but we'll get started tonight. Tonight, I wanted to talk about. I kind of entitled it "First Things First." You know, I want to talk defense. We'll have a period where we're going to talk some defensive recognition on the call tonight. Talk a little bit about goals. Talk a little bit about the philosophy, um, and then kind of what our opponent is seeing when they're looking at us. And I want us to kind of work through some of those things, open that up for some dialogue after the fact. But that's kind of the tenor for tonight. We'll get it rolling here. Let me just let one more guy in. Eric is jumping in right now as we speak. Get him in the meeting, and then we'll get the screen shared and we'll get rolling. All right. So, like I said, this one I've kind of entitled "First Things First." To me, before you can just get started with the X and O's and all the stuff with the running back, I think there's other things you got to be able to see. My little 2 cents for the day. But the things I want to hit, I want to talk a little bit about goals, whether they're stat driven or whether they're action driven, and I'll give you examples of what I mean by that. Be curious to hear some of your guys' goals and aspirations that you have for your position that you set out. I want to get into some defensive information and talk through fronts and coverages and base pressures. I think that's like the foundation of what you need, and most of you guys are already doing it. But just like we can talk about our base offensive plays, we need to be able to talk about base defensive plays as well, and be able to teach those things to our players. Then I want to get into, from an organizational standpoint, talk to you about some of what I term concept outlines. And I'll kind of show you what I mean, but having your protections put in an organized way, have your run game put together in an organized way, and have your route concepts put together in an organized way. And then finally, we'll really talk and then really get the discussion going about what is it we actually see on the film, and understanding what we see on the film, whether it's to help our players get better or whether it's to help us get ready to game plan our opponent. So that's kind of the topics and the order discussion that we'll hit tonight. From a goal standpoint, there's a lot of different things. I'm going to just share some of the things I talk about, and then I kind of open it up to the entire group. But to me, you got to be able to have a solid teaching progression, and I want to be able to deliver that progression to my players. And then ultimately, I want my players to be able to regurgitate our teaching progression back to me, because that way I know I've presented the information well, they really understand it. For me, it's huge for us, and for you guys, it's the same way. Improve continually throughout the season. We've got to be a better group week 12 or week 16 than we were week 1 or week 2. And along that journey, we've got to be able to develop depth. So I know, Eric, you had to play with young kids early this year. You had to play with freshmen, and they, played a major role. Some guys maybe had juniors and seniors that played a major role. But developing that depth, so if someone goes down, another guy can go in, and hopefully you don't lose a lot. I've always taken pride in trying to have my group be the best conditioned group on our team. We run between the running back position. You could argue the defensive backs and the wide receivers. Those groups are doing the most running in a practice. They're involved in the special teams as well. To me, we've got to be the best conditioned group, and that would be one thing that I would challenge my guys with. It would be one thing I would challenge them with in the off-season program, because then that that gets the work ethic that you want as they're going through the off-season program. So we always talk about our skill development, but then I'm always harping on them on their conditioning, and the best way to be in shape is to not get out of shape. These would be things that I would have in my room that I would talk to the guys about. I don't want you to beat ourselves. We can't beat ourselves. The enemy has to be in the other camp. The enemy can't be within. Okay. Be our best at critical moments. Okay. Situational football, third down, goal line, fourth quarter, be our best when the critical moments are. Minimize missed run reads. We're not going to be perfect. Minimize technique errors. Once again, we're not going to be perfect, but we've got to minimize those things and minimize drop balls. And that means whether I'm trying to catch the football or whether I've got the football in my hand. And then some of the other things that still go into stats could be, average 5 yards per carry. That's almost a college goal. In the NFL, I would lower that down to about 4.5 in all honesty. Be able to do your job, right? That's, the New England Patriots mantra in terms of a goal, just do your job. Position group expectations, to me, it's always be early, attentive, and interactive. If we can do those things, we've got a chance. And then the practice expectation is our tempo is going to be high, our effort's going to be high, and we're not going to have missed assignments, so our accountability is going to be high. I'm just curious with any of you guys, if you want to share maybe some of the things you've talked about with your group in terms of goals, whether it's during the season or whether it's during the off-season program.
I kind of split mine up into 2 seasons, for spring and fall, for as when it comes to goals. If we talking about fall, I go into some of the same things that you're talking about, Coach, but I have a strong emphasis on ball security in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? In the fall is ball security. I know we do it every day, but it's a strong emphasis for us, a mindset, and for us making a conscious effort of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the fall, I also talk about just some of the goals that I put down for some of my guys that I can tell you about it. It's basically continue to expand your understanding of your assignment, in the fall. And basically, like you said, you got 5 yards of carry. We got 4 yards. We pretty much get the filthy 4, having efficient play. We talk about the efficient plays, getting the filthy 4. Basically having confidence when you get the ball in your hand. Maintaining the confidence when sudden change, adversity comes. Some of the same thing you're talking about. Be consistent. Try to be consistent on every snap. And we also talk about being a selfless player. Basically some of the things that you talk about, being competitive on every snap. But another big thing that I do just in the fall is being able to take care of your body. We talk about taking care of your body big time, about how we take care of our body, because a lot of the kids, they don't know how to go in and get treatment, maintenance on their body to make sure that we staying healthy, make sure that we doing the things that we need to be doing correct.
Right.
And basically we also just talk about basically setting the main goals for us, don't giving up any sacks, pass protection. We want to dominate, and basically create a big play, some of the things you talk about. And then they change they pretty much change in the spring. We'll go into depth, but I don't want to talk about it. We got a little time here. I want everybody to get in and get some.
Just reiterating what Coach was saying, I think ball security, that's huge for me, and something I harp on all the time. And I think it pays dividends, huge dividends. The last 3 years coaching the position group, we've had 1 fumble. And it wasn't even a lost fumble. So, if you harp on it enough, you can make it happen, which I think is imperative. So that's a big one for me. Off the field stuff, I think Coach hit on a lot of good things in season. One big thing for me, or in our group as well, is just making sure, just kind of having some sort of a GPA, the GPA part of it. Being in the college, like, hey, you're again, I'm at a high academic institution, so a lot of these kids are pretty self-driven in that regard anyway. But just again, having them be accountable to staying with the grades, because they know obviously it's going to have to keep them on the field, but having some sort of a unit goal right there. I think again, it's just important to highlight some of the other aspects of why they're here, and and competing. But it's part of competing. If they don't think it is, just in life. It's just one more thing you got to compete at, and you got to beat people at, because at the end of the day, when it comes time to get a job and all that other stuff, you got to be able to ready to roll. So that's one of the other big ones for us.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to add, or we'll keep it moving?
Yeah. Now for me, we do what we call our kind of big 3. Number 1 is protect our quarterback. That is our main goal. And I'm gonna be honest, I tell them all 100%. Whatever you got to do to protect our quarterback and keep him upright, that's what we're gonna do. And then our next one is ball security. And I'm like some of everybody else on here, I really want 100%. I don't want the ball on the ground. You cannot turn it over. And I'll tell the guys in a minute, and I'll practice the same way. I'll coach them in a game. If it does hit the ground, I don't care if you're running back to the play, you're out. And I'm put the next guy in, and they know it, you know. And then my next piece of it is doing something on every play. And if the ball's thrown 10 yards down the field, we're finishing 10 yards down the field. That's what the ball's going to be. You know, those are some of my main goals. Those are things to me that I tell young people that you can't, those are things that you can just do. And it's not, you don't take a talented person to be able to get it done. Any level player can get that done. And those are those things in that aspect. And those are my goals with it. And then we'll get into sometimes, and I'll break it down differently depending on the player, like average yards or other things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let me get Jamie. I want to get your take from the high school level. What would be some things that maybe what would be some of the things you would try to talk about with some of your guys leading into the off season?
Well, we started off-season training on last Wednesday, and with these guys coming back, a lot of them. I have 2 juniors, so they're trying to step into that leadership role. So right now, for us, it's accountability and lead them by example, setting the tone for the guys coming in underneath you and showing them, the proper way to do things, so we can develop the program once they're out. For myself, I've been reading a lot about leadership. Just trying to expand my knowledge as a coach. I mean, I play the game, but now seeing it from this perspective, it's brand new. So our goals are common quite often. So that's really what I got right now.
Let's keep it moving here. I want to spend a little bit of time on this topic. I want to spend a little bit of time on defensive information. And I know everybody within their system may have different verbiage for things. But I want to kind of just talk through fronts a little bit, coverages and base pressures, and maybe help guys see things that maybe they aren't seeing or maybe don't understand quite as well. So we'll kind of talk, from a base standpoint, depending on how you want to term regular and or 12 personnel, you've got base defense with 4 down and either 3 linebackers like on the left, or your team, or you're playing against a 34 base team where you've got 3 2-down linemen and 4 linebackers, and really one of those 4 linebackers in most people's 3-4 is really like a down lineman anyway in terms of the rush capabilities. But normal 4-3 personnel defense, I'll talk, and then normal 3-4 personnel. From a defensive standpoint, you get in the nickel and different people play a different way. I look at nickel as just being there's 2 linebackers in the game, and now we've got 5 defensive backs. And when you're playing against those 3-4 teams that go to nickel, and now the Sam and the Rover or the Rush become the 2 ends, to me that still falls into the 4-man front family for me as I teach the running backs. And I'm just worried about, do we have the 5th defensive back in the game? And then when we identify that guy, he is usually going to be a plus or minus 1. I'm so used to coaching in a tag system of identifying guys where we don't necessarily identify the MAC, we identify a person, and then we count plus and or minus 1. So that nickel defender, more times than not, is going to end up a plus or minus 1 depending on the scheme that we have. Some people play it with a corner. Some people play it with a safety, depending on what they're going against. The dime personnel, now we've got 6 DBs in the game. Usually we get one of those DBs to play the adjuster backer position in the box if we still have 11 personnel. And then once again, that to me sets up a whole different type of game plan in attacking that defender in the run game, in my opinion. So the top left and the top right diagrams, if we're talking about a team is going to play us in 11 personnel that way, I'm going to make sure we have a lot of good stuff to get after the dime in the run game. So one of the first plays that's going up, if they line up like that, is going to be power. I'm going to make him fit a pulling guard because that's not something he's used to doing. So to me, knowing what personnel's in the game and where guys are playing should help dictate some of the scheme things you're going to derive. And then you see some teams that'll play quarter personnel and play with 7 defensive backs in the game, whether they're going to play with 2 linebackers or 1 linebacker. But now you've got to account for other jersey number types as a +1 and or a -1 based on your scheme. From a front standpoint, kind of real brief and real quick, I use these terms. That doesn't mean you guys use these terms, but some of them I think are pretty generic. Starting in the top left, an Okie front, basically, and this is how I try to coach the backs, the interior 3, the center and the 2 guards. And once you have an idea of what is over the center and the 2 guards, you can understand how fronts work. So an Okie front is a center covered with both guards uncovered. That's how I define it to the backs. 2 play side linebackers, 2 overhang backers. And then whether you have a 4-eye, a 4, a 5 technique, it all fits to me in an Okie front, even though we could argue and say, well, if a guy is playing a 4-eye, he's a B gap player. And if a guy is playing a 5, he's a C gap player. I'm just, from a front standpoint, want to know, are the guards covered or uncovered? They're uncovered and the center's covered. It falls in the Okie family. If we want to talk about understructures, then the 3 technique is going to be away from the tight end. And the shade nose is going to be to the tight end. So the verbiage I always use is, hey, the shade 5 and 9 is to the tight end side in understructures. The 3 technique travels weak. We want to slide that to the overstructures. Now the shade and the 5 are away from the tight end and the 3 technique is to the strong side. If we want to put the linebackers in the stack like they are in this bottom left picture, the term that I've used is swim. I've also used stack. The swim was a way to say Sam and Will in the box. In one system I've been in. The other thing that'll come out of my mouth is stack over stack, just because the linebackers are all stacked. And then you've got your bear family, where now on the interior 3, they're all covered. Now, it could be an under bear, it could be an over bear, but you've got the interior 3 covered, and it's just a matter of, did they reduce weak or reduce strong? But just some end zone copies of, once again, both guards are uncovered, the center's covered. Whether the center's covered with a shade or not is irrelevant. We've got the guards uncovered. In an understructure, we'll get that shade 5-9 will be to the tight end side. So the shade 5 and 9 is going to travel to the tight end side, and we'll have the 3 technique on the weak side of the defense. If we want to get in split hairs between under and under G, we can do that as well. From an over standpoint and over swim standpoint, once again, we're talking about having the 3 technique travel with the tight end, whether we've got a 9 or a 6 or a 7 out here with the defensive end, it doesn't matter. We've got the center covered on the back side. Once again, we know this nose could be a shade. He could be a G technique and be over G. And then we've got stack backers playing the open gaps. So an over structure, my guys would be thinking, and I'm sure your guys would be thinking the same thing. We've got the 3 technique to the tight end. We've got an open B gap on the weak side of the defense. And then you get your bear family, whether it's 1 linebacker defense and or 2 linebacker defense, depending on what they're playing against, whether it's 11 personnel or 21 or 12 personnel. And then you start to get your nickel stuff, or your light boxes, your 4-2 box, okay? Strong rotation in this particular case with 22 standing at the end of the line. your sub odd, where now you don't have linebacker types as those outside backer positions. You have DB, so they're dime in this particular case with 31 and 42 as the overhangs. Load front, where you start to see teams line up and put 3 defensive linemen on one side and only have 1 lineman on the other side. I term that as a load. And then the split mug stuff is normally a third down deal, but 2-3 techniques, usually with the 2 defensive tackles, and then you get to the interior linebackers to walk up and mug in the A gaps. So this would be what I would term split mug. I think when you're putting your protections in, and you need to have answers for this, in my opinion, this front, because of all the multiplicity that the defense can use. And sometimes this breaks your rules, having both guys walked up in the A gap. To me, a lot of conversation and coordination needs to be put into how we are blocking this front in our base protections. I think too, as we start talking pressures, I'm this way. You guys may not be. A dog to me is a linebacker rush. A blitz to me involves a secondary guy. That's just how I was programmed or have been programmed. So what you're seeing here is, there's the way you would break it down and put it on the paper to go into the computer in terms of, I've been in systems where we use A, B, C, D for the tight end gaps. We use 1, 2, 3 for the open side gaps. My guys would get used to hearing, single backer dog, whether it's Sam, Mike, or Will, that would hit that one of those guys came. And then it's either exterior or interior. Sometimes I don't care if it's an A or B gap rush. That would fall in my interior, Mike inside, Sam outside, in terms of how I talk to him on the single backer stuff. When we start to get 2 linebackers in the blitz, then these kind of terms, strong dog is my Sam, Mike. And when they hear strong dog, the Sam is the contained player, the Mike is the penetrator. So the Sam's going to be outside the Mike. If I were to say strong wrap to them, they would know that the Mike is the contained player and the Sam's a penetrator. So that's just my verbiage in talking to my guys. Strong dog, weak dog, saw dog. Okay, kind of self-explanatory from there. And just a look at some of this stuff. Once again, I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence, but just talking about the blitzes and the dogs. Once again, really the same way you talk about your own offensive concepts and your offensive plays. Now, this pain in the ass, okay, this okie dokie deal here is, okay, you can see the defense is in a split mug, and what they're going to do, and it works out good because it's jersey, the red jersey on defense. He's going to fake like he's dropping in the coverage first, and then he's going to delay blitz. In this particular protection, the back is checking the red jersey first, and then his eyes are coming out here to 26. We're in a search protection, and the line is handling the 4 down plus the mugged linebacker in the blue jersey. So the minute the red jersey retreats, the back gets his eyes off him and comes over to 26, and now the red jersey blitzes again. So this is what we've termed in our room an okie doke blitz, where they're doing this to kind of confuse you and get your eyes off your work and then add the blitz anyway. So you can see it worked the way the defense wanted it to work in that particular situation. Single blitz from the secondary, whether it's the free safety, whether it's the strong safety, whether it's the corner and a cat. And really, for the most part, you can identify these things pre-snap for the most part. Very rarely, but there are times where you get the double cat, which is one of the big pains in the butts to try to handle. Okay, here's a saw blitz, the 2 edge rushers, a Sam and a Will. That particular blitz is a problem for certain protections, most especially when you're dual reading your back from one outside backer to the other outside backer. Saw blitz is a problem for the quarterback, is going to force a hot throw in some instances. the strong dog combinations of the Sam and Mike, whether it's Sam and Mike inside or outside. And so down here at the bottom, and then the versions of coverage behind it with the 3-zone blitz coverages behind it. Your cross dog family, whether they hit both A gaps, whether they hit an A and a B gap. This is one of those blitzes that usually shows because the penetrator is usually in front of the looper. So it's one that you can kind of see coming. And then with this particular blitz, there's going to be communication. At times, you've got to trade off with your center. Just a double blow, both inside linebackers blitzing straight ahead in their respective open gap. And here's a picture of 21. So here's a dime look right there where 21 is playing a linebacker position. Then you got your cub and or bear looks. We use the terms cub was for the 6-man version, bear was for the 7-man version. So this would really be cub for me. And then once again, if you had 2 linebackers in the box, or if you had 1 linebacker and a safety in a press position over the tight end, the outside linebacker in number 4. So when you start to get in some of these third down pressures out of dime and quarter, and they bring +1 and +2 on a particular stunt, like in this case, you've got an answer for it. So here's the Sam and the strong safety as part of that blitz combination, the way we identified it. And then you get the teams that are going to bring more than you can block. So they're going to bring it all out and play zero coverage. And obviously, like, we would say in college, someone's band's about to be playing. Either the defense is going to come home and their band's going to be playing, or the offense is going to hit a play and the offensive band is going to be playing, offensive team's band. But the ability for teams to show you zero or middle of the field empty looks and bring 7 and or 8 guys on the rush. Okay, so a lot of good coordination going on that particular snap with the whole blocking unit and the quarterback to the wide receiver. And then I want to just hit the coverages and have a good understanding, because we all know, for example, there's a lot of different variations of coverages, so like even on this page here, you've got cover 3. What does it mean in terms of 3 deep and 4 underneath cover guys? But you could have cover 3 when the strong safety is the curl flat defender. You could have buzz, or in my term, buzz, when the safety is the hook curl player and he drops inside the linebacker positions, and then it can rotate and be a 3 cloud. So a lot of different ways to have just cover 3. So we'll kind of hit a few here and talk through these things and work them. Cover 0, to me, there's no deep safety. So we would talk these terms. Everybody talks middle of the field open. Everybody talks middle of the field closed. The other term we had in Detroit was middle of the field is empty. And that meant there wasn't a DB. The DBs weren't back at DB level. So if we got a middle of the field empty look, that equated to cover 0. And then that got us into particular checks, screens and or max protect, or, whatever we needed to get. But so no deep safeties, man coverage, so here they're playing cover 0. We happen to catch them with a screen. One of those things, once again, someone's band's going to be playing. Hopefully it's yours. But catch a team in 0. This is always a fun question I like to ask. And you guys don't have to necessarily answer, but I would like you to think about it. When you think of cover 1, how many men does that equal in the rush? Does it, in your brain, equal a 4-man rush? Or in your brain, does it equal a 5-man rush? And in my brain, if you said it was just cover one, it would equal a 5-man rush. And then you'd have 5 guys covering the 5 eligibles, and you'd have 1 post safety. If you told me it was like 1 combo, then to me that would equal a 4-man rush, and it would equal to me one of the linebackers is an underneath hole player, and then you have the free safety. So as simple as that sounds, I'm sure guys would have different answers on what's cover one mean to them in terms of the rush. Is it a 4-man rush or a 5-man rush? So just plain cover one to me equates to a 5-man rush. And you got 5 eligible receivers being defended by 5 defensive personnel. When you start talking 1 combo or 1 funnel, now that equates to the 4-man rush. And now you've got probably a banjo on the back. And so the back is offset here. 45's probably got the coverage. And now this linebacker is going to be free. Here's a pretty good picture because we've got a man route on. We're running a double move off the angle for the tailback. So the route is a pretty good route right here versus the coverage we got. You know, your cover 2 concepts, obviously 2 deep structure, 5 underneath defenders. The corners are going to be in cloud positions. This could be disguised thousands of different ways. You know, sometimes you got to see passes to really know what you're looking at. Sometimes you can just decipher it based on the look. You know, what I would term lock, where it's cover 2, but now the linebackers are going to match or carry the inside receivers vertical. So it's a 2 outside, and it's more man inside. So the ability to get some of these additional concepts that go along with base cover 2. Tampa 2 really is, in my book, I treat this like cover 3, where the Mike backer, the majority of times it's the Mike backer people play this with, where he's running to get to the post. I have seen this played where the nickel is the guy that runs to the post and the Mike backer comes over to play the curl area. But the majority of the time it's played, the Mike backer is really trying to get to the post versus 3 on a vertical. And the safeties really become like third players. You know, so a look at a Tampa 2 look there. You know, 2-man is exactly what it sounds like. Should have inside and underneath man coverage with deep help over the top. People will use the term trail technique for the guys playing man on the backs. You can see that Atlanta's matching and hugging up the back. You can see on the back end the nickel trying to play underneath, and we still got the ball in there. Everybody has their different versions of how you want to call middle of the field closed. We use 3 and 5. 3 meant strong rotation or to passing strength. The invert was 5 meant the invert was away from passing strength. And in the last system I was in, that doesn't mean that's how it always has to be. But cover 3, strong rotation. Cover 5, weak rotation. You know, outside underneath defenders playing the curl flat, corners overlap the seams. You know, so just some examples of some middle of the field closed zone coverages. You know, whether it's a buzz, and once again we talked about buzz being the safety dropping down inside of the linebacker. So usually into the boundary. You can see it both ways. This one's going to come down from the boundary where the safety is going to drop inside, and now the outside backer will be the curl flat player. He'll be the hook curl player, still get you to a 3 deep zone. Okay, match would be when you get the nickel and the safeties carrying number 2 on the vertical. So, you know, 3 match, similar to 2 lock, we're going to carry verticals on defense. We're not going to spot drop. Okay, so up top is a good, well, really both sides is a good example of the overhang defenders, the invert defenders carrying the vertical. This is one that a lot of teams use in the NFL. It's named after what the Seattle Seahawks do. It's a version of 3, and they're going to play true zone on the passing strength side, and then they're going to match away from passing strength. So you'll have one half of it look like it's zone and drop to zone, and the other half is going to look like match. So here's just an example, a couple examples of that. Okay, and I'll rewind this one so you can see it. So it's match up top. The safety here is matching the vertical at number 2 up top, but to the passing strength side, the invert is playing zone and dropping to a spot and letting the vertical go. So just the differences between what the overhang defender up here is doing compared to what the overhang defender down at the bottom is doing is the difference in the concept of the coverage. Here's going to be another example of the coverage, and this is going to be kind of a Seattle beater. They're zoning over to the passing strength, matching over to the away from passing strength, and the ability to bring receivers from the zone side across the formation to the match side and get a play. The man side over to the lock side and got a play. This is a similar type of concept that we used against Atlanta here. And then you get all your blitz zone family of it's not 7 guys playing coverage, it's only 6 guys playing coverage. And how are they going to play their coverage? Is it going to be a 3 under 3 deep coverage, or is it going to be basically a 4 under 2 deep coverage that they're going to play? And it's going to be accompanied with a 5-man rush. A really good picture here of the 3 under 3 deep. At this point, you can see the 3 underneath defenders, you can see the 3 deep defenders, and it's accompanied with a 5-man rush. So once again, you start to think zone blitz coverages in your brain, it should equate to a 5-man rush. Okay, same thing here. It's going to be a 3Z coverage. Here's the will and the free safety on the blitz, and it's still rolling weak and still giving you the 3 under 3 deep. Blitz zone palms, once again, the ability to be a 2 high now, a 2 high coverage with your zone blitz. Some people will read it like they do true palms coverage. Other people will just spot drop it, but the ability to get a 2 deep zone blitz coverage and read the release of number 2. And then the family of quarter, half, whether it's quarters to passing strength and half away from passing strength, and then you can get it the exact opposite, So here's an example of, cover 6, quarter, half to the passing strength, or it could be the half could be to the passing strength like here, halves down here and quarters up top. And then the last one I think I got on here is mini. The mini concepts basically are the ability for the defense to basically lock up number 1 to a 3-by-1 side with the corner, and then play their normal coverages with the nickel and strong safety and the inside backer off the remaining 2 guys. So the mini will basically put 1-on-1 outside with the widest receiver in the corner, and then they can play their coverage concepts off the slot receiver and the tight end, basically like the nickel is the corner. So people will play many techniques to try to erase one and give you different looks and have the ability to have some run support based on teams that are running bubbles and everything. They can at least get the nickel on the right side of number 2 for some run support responsibilities. Any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts on just going through some of those coverages, some of those fronts and or blitzes? Okay, nope, all right. And then I want to get to what I would term outlines. I think this is personally, I think this is a good deal for all of us to work on, is put together our schemes in an outline form. So here's just an example of what the zone schemes would look like in a particular offense. A lot of different ways with the descriptions. You can see we could run a zone football play, whether it's one back strong and it's like a tight zone, or whether we're going to go one back weak and use jab footwork, or we're running the duo football play where we're going to have the guard and tackle or the tackle tight end work to the Mike backer. The true one back weak zone, your different ability to run a one back weak zone and move your tight end, come across a formation and block on a forced defender or block on the defensive end on the backside. So this would be an example of my zone page of my run outline. And then I would have a gap page, and I would have a lead page, and then I would have a miscellaneous page, because there's a few runs to me that kind of are out of the zone world. And then I'd have an outside zone. I have my inside zones and outside zones broken up, lead, gap, and then I have my little miscellaneous for some outliers. Here's just an example of what a protection outline could look like with some of the terminology that you use for your back and or the offensive linemen are using. So you're on the same page, whether it's a sort, what that means. That's a lineman term. Search is a back term. Coast is a back term. Area is a tight end tackle term. Sift is an offensive line, really an uncovered offensive lineman term. 5 down, we use poker, 5 down, 5-0. Those are all terms that would tell us we're going to identify this front we're looking at as a bare front, regardless of if it is or if it isn't, or if it was gray. If the term 5 down came out the quarterback's mouth, it is. And then I break things down in terms of what I would term sort protection schemes, base protection schemes, slide protection schemes, and gap protection schemes. That's how my brain has formulated protections. Sort meaning that the line is going to be in the dual read. We're going to have either 3 for 4, meaning 3 offensive linemen account for 4 defenders. So they have to check either the Mike and or the Sam. So they're the dual reader. Our slide schemes would put the back on the dual read. Man front side, slide back side. The line is sliding to one linebacker, where the back now is dual reading the Mike and Sam, or the tag and the +1, whatever term you want to use. The base scheme would be big on big, lineman handling the 4 down and the Mike or the tag, and the back and or quarterback handling the +1 or the -1 or the Sam and Will, whatever terminology you want to use. And then when we start talking gaps, no one has a man. We all are responsible for a defender who's in a gap. So whether the line is going front side and blocking their front side, or right gaps, and the back is coming off the left edge and blocking the left gap, left C gap outside the tackle, or vice versa, or we're running sprint protection and we're going to half roll and we're all going to roll to our front side gap, and whether we're using the back front side or back side, that fits in that family for me. So to me, there's 4 different families of protection: sorts, slides, mans, and gaps. And this outline kind of helps me put them together. Sort scheme, how many men are in the protection, what is the rule for the line, what is the rule for the back, and what, if anything, makes the quarterback hot. So that's how they're written out. And then I put together route outlines too for my players and for me. And here's just an example of a little bit of, the quick game concept, what that means. And it's always number 1 receiver, then number 2 receiver. So when you see slant shoot, number 1 receiver has the slant, number 2 receiver has the shoot. On slash, for example, tossers, everybody's on slants. Sonic, quick out stick, Slater, tight end sides working slash, the weak sides working tosser, so on and so forth. Our attackers are basically our concept of basically rub plays that everybody's running. And we used basketball terms for the most part, basketball teams for our, we sold it to our players as these are pick and roll type of family of plays. And so then we gave them basketball cities names to try to help them remember, who was doing what. And then you'll see like, on Orlando, for example, the first one under attackers, the numbers alignment, and that's talking about the outside receiver where he's aligned. And then it's a rub spot. So we never talked about pick. We always talked about we're rubbing a defender. And then what we were doing, we're trying to send that defender over the top. And then number 2's running the shoot, and he's the primary target. So that's just an example. And then you can see the Big Ten family, Pac-12 family, vertical family, full field family. Those particular families of plays, for the most part, told the back what his check down was. So when we were running a version of a Big Ten family, which for us meant we've got a shallow cross and a dig somewhere inside, and then the outside receivers have what they have, and the back now is usually checking wide away from the shallow cross, so they would be able to compartmentalize, Big Ten family, hey, those all equal this. Pac-12 family, those all equal this. When we're running a vertical concept, they all equal this. And then, the last thing I want to talk about is just for us really understanding what's on the film when we're putting stuff together, when we're game planning, when our opponent's game planning us, like what is on the film and what are we actually looking at and how are we trying to decipher what we see? And to me, what's on the film is, from your opponent, you're trying to look at scheme, obviously, what they do. You're trying to figure out how they do it as well. You're looking at personnel when you're watching film, which player is a good player, which player is not a good player, where may we have an advantage or disadvantage. To me, from our standpoint, we've got to be able to have the linebacker tendencies down, which guys tackle well, which guys should tackle as well, which guys don't do that well when we want to direct something. What type of range do the linebackers have? Can the inside linebacker make plays in the perimeter? Can he not make plays in the perimeter? What type of flow are they? How are they being coached? Are they a slow flow team? Are they a fast flow team? When we have slice actions, are they going to fall back on zone run? Do they have pass rush capability? How are they in coverage? One of the things I like to do is I like to put tapes together of the backs, the linebackers in one-on-one pass coverage, so we can watch those things throughout the week and get an idea of whether a guy can or a guy can't, can't cover guys. What are the safeties' tendencies? Really, it falls into the same thing. Their tackling ability, what's their range like? Mostly in the run game, not necessarily in the pass for us. If they blitz, how do they rush? And then what do they do up front? Are they a spill team? Are they a box team? Do they spill everything to the low shade or to the one technique side? And do they box everything to the 3 technique side? Just trying to get a feel for how they're playing their defense, because then that's going to, as you're game planning, if they're going to spill and or box, you can figure out which way do we want to run counter. Do we want to run counter at the up the field box player? Or do we want to run counter at the spill player and then get the ball to bounce around the edge? And to me, you don't put that play up on the call sheet until you figure out how they're trying to coach their defensive ends, and then you understand where the ball should go if they play it their normal way. But that's what I mean when I'm saying what are we seeing on the film is going to dictate how we're going to game plan certain things. And then do they show off their pressures by alignment? Do certain things show from the linebackers? We all know certain blitzes show. Cross dog, it's very, very hard for the defense not to show that blitz. so we can see it. In some of our 3-by-1 formations, most especially if number 3 is detached, we can see some things based on where the boundary safety has to get to play coverage. So there's certain things that we can tell. If we're playing against a team that doesn't press their corners and all of a sudden a corner's press, well, I'd be expecting a cat blitz. So do our alignments help identify stuff? And then the big thing to me is, can you decipher their signals and or their calls? And that's something that if you're not coaching your guys to do, you should be coaching your guys to do. Because if you play no huddle offensive football, they have to communicate on defense either through signals or verbally. And it's shame on you if you're not coaching your guys to pick up and understand whether what the Mike backer is saying or whether what the strong safety is saying. And then what is your opponent seeing from you? You know, your alignments mean something to the defense, whether you're in gun near or gun far. What's the width of your alignment? What's the depth of your alignment? Is it the depth that you run inside zone out of, or do you get kind of uptight to the quarterback when you're running your outside runs across his feet? You know, the defense is looking at those things. What are your eyes doing pre-snap? Are you giving away the play, or are you giving away the direction based on what the running back's eyes are doing? What are the tendencies in the run game in terms of play type and point of attack? What's the favorite move of the back? And this is, once again, I'm sharing this information with linebacker coaches and secondary coaches that I've talked to in terms of what they look at. And I've had guys tell me, shit, we can tell every time so-and-so's getting the ball because of ABC. And then when you start to look at it, you're like, well, damn, he sure does do that. Okay, appreciate you. I'll get that coached out of him. Last but not least, does certain personnels equal certain plays? And I think we may all fall slightly guilty of this. You know, one particular back does something better than the others, so you try to get him in when you call this particular concept. It may not show up all the time, but you can probably think of some things that you guys have done where it's like, well, damn, yeah, if they're really onto it, they can get an idea that the ball might find him in this particular situation, in this formation. But that's just a little bit when I talk about what's on the film, things that your opponents see and things hopefully you're seeing as you go through some stuff. So with that said, I'm going to stop the share and then get this opened up here for a little bit more discussion.
To definitely, for what you guys with pass protection, are you guys always kind of inserting? Is it entering? Does it matter on how he comes off and helps that outside? Do you have him step up inside?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the scheme. Like I said, we would in different schemes. I think there's different things you're doing, and then and importantly too, what's the route and are we a viable receiver on the route? So some of the things we would do, if we had an inside linebacker, let's say, if that guy did not rush, we weren't necessarily sitting around to try to look for work. We would try to get out in our route. There'll be obviously the times that my protection drops, but I feel like someone may be getting beat. Then obviously the back is going to help there and abort his route, because it does us, the one thing we always talk about, it does us no good for you to run your route and the quarterback's getting sacked, right? So if you're about to run your route and you see someone getting beat, you've got to go assist that protection, even though that wasn't part of your job. That play, it is part of your job now based on what happened. And obviously you're not getting the ball, but hopefully the quarterback's going to have a chance to do something with it. If your protection responsibility comes, obviously you're involved in the protection and you're going to block and do that. But what did you guys do this year in terms of with your protections? How would you try to coach your guy?
We had an offense coordinator who was big on making sure that back stayed in help and matching up. Definitely if we had 5 or any kind of pressure. But we would always go inside. So at times we'll have them release inside. But we have a new coach now. We've been debating back and forth about helping that outside with the chip and then putting them out in the route. Or do we do both? And you just answered my question. It's going to be dictated by the route that's associated with that play with the back. If I want him to run angle, he should chip.
Right.
Because now I really need him.
Right. But if he's running the angle though, he's probably, so if he's running the angle, he's got a chance to be primary to me.
Yeah.
Like that route is a route where it's going to be layered and you're high-lowing somebody, or that route is a man route and the quarterback's working to him. So I don't know if the angle route is the best route to say I'm going to chip on. Now there's other outside release routes that fit that much better than the angled or the choice route. Like if you're releasing on a choice route,
Sure.
you're primary. You're not involved with the chip. You're trying to work your coverage. Where so what I had to do in Detroit, we had certain calls where we were on the backside of the route and we had an outside release and we were just running a spot concept. We were just sitting down replacing a curl defender on the route. So on those calls, we built in for the back, when you hear that route concept, you are automatically chipping on your release if your work doesn't come.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do a lot of boundary. Our coordinator now is a boundary pass, field pass kind of person. So now he wants us to go away. They're going to the boundary. We're going to check and go away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and then obviously the routes that you have an inside release, you're not chipping, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not chipping on those. And then I would have to remind and try to have the backs remind the offensive line like those routes, because the linemen didn't remember the routes. So then we would have to come up with, we would talk potato chips, and the back would, like Doritos, he would say that to the tackle, just reminding the tackle, hey, you could get chip help here.
Okay.
You know,
that was my next question.
Yeah, that was our way to try to do it. And from the line coach, he never wanted those guys to think they were getting the help, because obviously if the linebacker blitzes, there is no chip because the back's used up in the protection. So our line coach, although he understood what we were trying to do from the scheme of the play, he wouldn't want the back to hear the chip call. I mean, the lineman to hear the Dorito call or the chip call. You know what I mean? He just wanted those guys thinking, hey, we are pass blocking this guy. We can't depend on having the back there. And then that was just our assurance to try to let him know, hey, on this route, we're going to be there for you if you need us. And half the time you're in position to chip, and some of the time you actually get the chip and you assist the rush, and sometimes just your body presence takes the speed rusher and turns them into a bull rusher quicker, and so your tackle's on it anyway and you can get out.
I like that. And that's one of those big things that, like, when we said our backs now are better catchers, it's about getting them into the route progression.
Right.
And it's just making sure that communication right there that you just saw for us. If he's going outside, we're going to give him a potato chip. And that's exactly what I'm going to call it. I'm going to tell him to say any kind of, it could be Doritos one week, it could be Fritos.
Yeah, whatever you want it to be. And like I said, that's your lingo language that you can use with the tackles. And then obviously, like we said, there's some times where it's not going to be a factor. To me, anytime we're scatting the back or free releasing the back, that's not part of the deal. If we're free releasing you, we want you in the route. We don't want you in the protection. So there is no thought of a chip. There is no anything like that on free release routes. In my opinion, I don't know if other guys may have a different opinion on that.
No, you're right. You know, we're getting out on the swing route and he impedes our path of getting out. We're chipping back to the tackle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also, if you got a couple of war daddies, like you said, they get upfield fast, and we can basically game plan it to chip those guys back inside. Or when we getting out on our arrow route, they're getting upfield, we chip them in, and we on the swing route or the arrow route for us, we getting out. But we also still got our protection and that we got to watch out for as well. So just like you say, the guy
Right.
green dog, he green dog you, and some of these kids, they get caught up on, they got a one-track mind, and you tell them one thing and that's what they concentrate on. They end
Right.
up a linebacker green dog them, and then now
Right.
get chin check, and now we're in trouble. So
They're so wanting to get out and get the chip and starting to get outside, and guys are running down and inside them. That becomes an issue as well. I know we've all felt that pain, so I'm not saying anything that is new.
basically we call it a rib sandwich. Get a real sound on the way out, baby. Real sound.
Yep.
Coach Hickson, how far do you let you guys deviate to chip if you're running the swing?
Huh?
I said, how far do you let you guys deviate to go get a chip when they're running the swing? Just because obviously you can't go too far, but
we basically flat down the line. We run our swings. A lot of teams bow back. We don't bow back. We basically run like a scat route straight down the line to scrimmage. And if he impedes our path, we're gonna chip him back inside because some of those guys get upfield fast now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we always have a read step. Depends on whether it's drop back. We have a read step, a short little read step when we step inside. Just looking to give us an opportunity to be able to look at our blitzer and then get out. Then we roll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's as you probably know, Jared, there's certain routes where the chip doesn't fit.
right.
You know, there's just certain route concepts it doesn't fit as well as you'd like it to fit in terms of what you got to do. And then I'll say that, and this is really, where is he at? So I can say, and Jamie, this is really, so Jamie coaches at the local high school that is in my community. So I get a chance to see some of the stuff he does. The one thing for you, I think you've got to try to work on next year is getting Aaron and Jonas into getting the back out a little bit more. So you can get those guys to go catch the ball a little bit, because you guys normally got good blockers, and sometimes you're wasting your back sitting there trying to help out where there's nowhere to help, and the defense is covering 7-on-4 as opposed to 7-on-5. You know, so I'll just say that, you know, from your standpoint.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like we don't use those guys enough, and when we do, you know, it's specific routes. But I mean, I feel like we could live on check downs sometimes. And you know, there's plenty of other opportunities, especially with how Coach Hahn spaces everybody out. There's more we could do there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with that.
Jamie, don't be afraid to argue with them offensive coordinators. They always want the running backs to block. See, that's why I start arguing.
You know, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to earn my stripes. I can't be arguing year one.
you
hopefully
can
year two.
you can argue diplomatically. You can argue.
Yes, there you go. Hey, we had a running back, and that's why I've been talking to you about the chip and everything. They lined him up last year. I think he ran 7 routes, caught 7 balls. This kid coming back this year, a little bit tall, a little bit faster. I said, Coach, we can't be sitting in the backfield blocking all the time. We ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
So they rushing forward with us. I went and did a whole breakdown of how many teams actually blitzes, how many of them actually, and it was a few times when this team covered our back and he never went nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a linebacker covering a kid that's like 6'1" sprinter.
Yeah.
We should have taken advantage.
Here's another thing, since we're on this topic now, and we're going to hit this topic later on, but since you just said something and it's on my mind a little bit too, is having the tools in your system to talk to your back and let him know who you want him to help by calls. So here's my example. I wish Pepe was on the call tonight, because it happened at the end of the Marshall game. In their bowl game, they're playing Buffalo, and Buffalo at the end of the game is rushing 3, playing prevent defense, and they're dropping back and they're keeping the back in. And like, this is how my mind works when we start talking pass protection. If we're talking about a concept of pass protection, it's never 1-on-1. To me, concepts of pass protection are 2-on-1, 3-on-2, 4-on-3. Like, that's just how my mind is programmed. So it's a 3-man front. The right guard is sliding to the nose. Okay. So the center and the right guard are blocking the nose, and the left guard, left tackle, and the back are all on the defensive end, and the right tackle is blocking the defensive end all by himself on the other side. So they've got 6 guys. They should have 3 2-on-1 combinations, but because of what the guards did and what the back did, they were fucked up, and the 1-on-1 is coming home. And one of the things I think it's important when you're coaching your guys, whatever the call is, or we had a hold call. And hold call to him meant if it's a 3-man rush, you are finding the single block. And it's all based on what the guard in front of you does. So if the guard in front of you fans out to the tackle, then you're going inside to look to double the nose. If that opposite guard went down to double the nose, then you're coming all the way across for the opposite tackle. But we're never going to be where we're not 3-on-2 in that situation, or excuse me, 2-on-1 in that situation. And so it's having the ability to put your back in the right spot. And it's the same thing with a 4-man rush. And then we always worked off the center. If we got a 4-man rush and we're holding you and the center goes left, then your ass better be on the right side so we can get the 3-on-2 the sides we need it. And so that's just a base thing for me that I think you guys got to have incorporated in, because you'll put your line in a poor position when you shouldn't have to put your lineman in a poor position. Your back's got to be your eraser at times when you want to keep them in the backfield. And it's all predicated on, are we dealing with a 4-man rush or a 3-man rush? And how can I fit to make sure we're either 3-on-2 or we're either 2-on-1 based on a 3 or 4-man rush?
Now, can I put another one out there for us all? Are most of us a lot of man protection when we come to it, or we're half man,
half slide,
half slide? Yeah.
Yep. So the 3-man side though, from your center guard and tackle, are and I'm talking a 4-man rush with a 3 technique front side. That's going to be to the backside, and your back is going to the man side, right? So your 3 blockers, the back and the guard and tackle on the man side, and your center guard and tackle on the backside of the slide, give you your 3 and 2 on both sides if there's no blitz. Yeah. And then based on what you're doing with your back, getting them out in the route, then it becomes a 2-on-2 again. But to me, that's the premise. When you start putting in protections, I don't think of protections as it's 1-on-1. Everybody's got a guy and it's 1-on-1 block. It's combinations of 2-on-1, 3-on-2, 4-on-3 when we protect the quarterback. Anybody else have any thoughts on that in terms of, just protection philosophy, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah, I got in here a little late, David. Sorry for jumping in so late. I don't know what you talked about earlier, but I think in coaching protections with the running backs, sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Coaching protections, the most important thing to me is to make sure that the back has to understand, in whatever the protection is, how many men are in the protection, and then what's their responsibility within that protection.
Yep.
And I think that you want to start off with them just truly understanding the concept of the protection, whether it's a man slide, whether it's a Mike declared protection, whether it's a full gap protection. They have to understand how many men are in the protection to begin with, and how they can compensate for it, where the 4-man blitz is and how we can flip protections. But the starting point has to be really simple so that they understand the big picture of the protection. Yep. I think so many times as running back coaches, we try to do too much with the backs from the beginning. You teach them all the exceptions to the rules instead of like 2-jet protection that everyone runs. It's a lock, it's a man, and it's a slide. You're on the lock side. So we have a duel to scan or whatever the protection rule is. And that's your starting point. The line's going to slide to the will, so that he's got to know where the point is and where the slide goes to, and then he can fit his responsibilities in from there.
Yep. Here I'm gonna go back and just share my screen for a second, Brian. I'm gonna just show you something that you didn't see a second ago, and so here's an example. And I don't know if you were on when I was doing this or not, but of a protection, what I'll call a protection outline with exactly what you're talking about in terms of, how many men are in the protection, what's the line responsible for?
Yeah.
What is my rule? What's my responsibility? And then the other thing that I think is important when we start talking protection is, what, if anything, forces the quarterback to be hot, or what gives the quarterback a problem? So if you understand the line's job, you understand your job, you understand the quarterback's problem, then all collectively, we're going to be able to understand why the quarterback may be adjusted a protection based on a particular look. Because we know, hey, if we're in a problem where the quarterback's hot off 1 or hot off 2, and he's getting 2, he can opposite the protection, he can get to a different protection. But this to me is something that, you know, I put with my guys, and I talk to them in terms of, like I said, to me, there's sort schemes and protection, which basically say the linemen have the dual read. Then there's to what I call slide schemes, where the back is the dual reader, Mike to Sam.
Sure.
And then I have what I term base schemes, where the linemen are going to lock the mic. And then I have what we term gap schemes, where no one has a particular man, everybody has their gap defender. But I think it's important that you have some understanding for your players about that.
I think it's big that you teach your guys the fronts. They got to know the fronts like the back of their hand. And, you know, whether it's just teaching them whether it's just even 4 down, 3 down, or bear. You know what I'm saying? Just basic stuff. They got to know basic fronts just in case, you know, teams that get in where they mic point and things like that. If they mess around this loud stadium, they miss the mic point. Now they got to understand. They got to be able to cipher through, like you said, they got to cipher through the defense and understand, okay, well, this is a 4-2 here. Okay, we understand this is the short side is the man side. So they got to be able to understand fronts too. I think that's very, very big.
Mm-hmm. And that's, to be honest with you, like we did the progression of this talk tonight, you know, to me, before I even start talking about the offensive plays, I want them to understand base defensive stuff. Because to me, I can't really talk to you about the protections if you don't know what I mean when I say +1 tag, -1 the tag, who's the tag, or Mike and Sam. You know, when I say 2 from the tag, and it's usually a defensive back element. What is split mug? What is our bear or 5-0 check? And what rules come into play there? And then having, you know, everybody has their own language of, you know, telling them, like, so I use the terms scan, search, and coast. And what those terms tell me is if I'm a back and the protection has a scan, and that's usually assumed, it means whatever responsibility you just gave me, it also entails the near DB. And I don't have to tell you that. So if I have -1 the tag, that automatically means I'm -1 the tag plus scan to the near DB on that side. If I told my guys the term search, that meant -1 the tag, the line is in a protection where they're handling the 4 down and the mic. They could be sorting the Mike and Sam, but I'm going to go -1 the tag to +1 the tag and any DB on either side. And then the term for me, coast, meant we're in a 7-man protection. I've got the weak side of the protection, -1 the tag. I'm going to go across the ball, but as I go across the ball, I'm not going to +1 because we've got a tight end or another back to handle that guy. I'm going to +2. The secondary element, because sometimes we're in a 7-man protection with the tight end. We never felt comfortable at dual reading that guy. He didn't have the same rule the back has in a scan. I got -1 in near DB. We didn't do that with our tight end when he had +1. He didn't do near DB, so the back had to go over and compensate. So a scan for me meant same side DB, a coast meant opposite side DB, and a search meant linebacker to opposite outside linebacker. In my terminology, how I present it to the guys.
Is tag your term for the point linebacker?
Yeah, tag, point linebacker, whatever. Yes.
Wherever the line's going?
Yep. And
I like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be where the line's going. It's just who are we identifying as I'm going to use the term Mike, but who are we identifying as the starting point of the linebacker?
Right.
Because as you know, in 2-jet, the back is blocking the tag. Right. But in a big on big protection, the line is blocking the tag.
Right.
So it just identified, you know, the starting point, and then we took our rules from there. And I liked, once again, I don't know how everybody does it, but having the terms, whether it was tag or not tag, whatever that term is, but the ability to say +1 and -1 defender, because that encompasses any safeties that drop down inside linebackers. You know, you're not always saying to the guy, you were responsible for the Sam backer here. Well, what happens if the Sam's walked out in 3-by-1 and the strong safety inverts? He's a new Sam. But if you're just saying, hey, you got the next defender, then that guy is encompassed in your rule. So I kind of like that. We didn't do that every other place I've been, but in the last 3 years when we were in Detroit, that's how we identified and handled protections. And in the run game, it was the same way. We used the same count system.
I think that's excellent.
Yeah. How are you guys doing it there in Colorado? What do you guys use in terms of terms out at Colorado State?
We use plus. We use the plus system. I'm always talking about plus blitzes, and we do a lot of scanning. But scan for me is your coast term, coast to coast.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we're in 2-jet protection, my rule is really simple. You ask any of my running backs, I'll tell them your rule is dual to scan. So you have your front side dual on the lock side, and then you're scanning coast to coast. So I'm always trying to teach my backs that great pass protectors eliminate threats pre-snap.
Absolutely.
So you've seen these backs all the time that they blink all over the place post-snap, and they don't know who, everything's flashing in front of them, and they really don't know who they're blocking. Whereas you can see these really good pass protectors who understand the protections, they're eliminating threats, and they're able to hit the smoke blitz from the opposite side because they understand where the threats are, and they know how to get there. They know how to get there and get there fast.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. For sure, the understanding and eliminating stuff is paramount. The thing that's good for you guys is for you things show better with what the secondary, how they can hold the shell based on the ball being on a true hash. Because on Sundays, regardless of what you want to say, the ball's always in the middle of the field.
Right.
So
yeah, no doubt.
It's so much easier to disguise shit. Makes it harder where, in college, once again, the hashes make things a little bit easier to decipher some of the pressures that you could get.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. Maybe not. Let me ask this question. Are most of you guys also the blitz guy on the staff in terms of what blitzes a team is bringing and then putting those in the scouting report or doing that script for Pass Pro? Do most of you guys
Yes.
do that? Okay. That's another great way. And then you should have a good idea of what they don't bring, right? Now, we all know a team can bring something for the first time against us, but if I haven't seen, 2 to the boundary with corner will or free safety will, then I won't say I won't worry about it, but I'm not going to lose sleep on that blitz. It's the shit that you see that you got to prepare for.
Yeah. And that is right. Is that we are that blitz guy. Usually for us too, in the pass protection piece, is understanding those fronts, putting them together. We're numbers. We started doing the number counting system too. I think that's the best way to do it because now you're not picking a guy on the field because now if somebody comes into that number count, you can add them in. I think that just made life easier for us. Yeah. Definitely when you double read things.
Right. The linebackers at times will, just like us as backs at times, sometimes we could get fixated on a point of attack. Well, they do the same thing on their side of the ball at times. And so sometimes you can get some information from them based on their vision or what their head's doing. So I like I said, some of you guys probably heard the story, but it's worth repeating. I'm in Indianapolis and I'm coaching Joseph Adai, and we're in a practice and it's a protection release route he's running. The defense lines up and they give a split mug. So both inside backers are walked up. He's got one of the inside linebackers. And at the snap of the ball, he free releases and runs his route. The linebacker dropped out. We ran the play. So I call him back after the play, put another back in. I said, hey, Joe, what was that protection? I said, it was radar. I said, I know, you gotta check protection. He said, I did. I said, no, shit, you didn't. I watched you. You free released. He said, Coach, when they get up there and they mug up, they tell their intent. Well, I said, how do they tell their intent? He says, when the linebacker's mugged up and he's looking at me, that guy's got me in coverage. When those guys are looking down at the ball, that's when they're blitzing because they're trying to time the snap count. And then I started paying attention to the linebackers, and he was right about 90% of the time in terms of the eyes of the backer. So you know, as much as we can give away stuff, there's a lot of stuff that we can get if we just pay attention to it. You know, there's one I can remember playing against back in the day when Paul Rhodes was the defensive coordinator at Pitt and I was coaching at Syracuse. And they weren't a field defense. They were a formation defense. But every time they wanted to run field strong dog, they switched their linebackers because they must have had one guy they liked in coverage and one guy they liked on a blitz. So we'd be lined up, and then every time, okay, whatever jersey number the kid was, 16, let's say, I don't know what jersey number he was. Anytime his ass was to the field, you were getting a blitz. You know, so it was like, damn, this is pretty good. We got this lined up. We're gonna get the back out all the time. We're opposite the protection. The back's gonna get out. We're gonna pick shit up and let's roll. So I think there's a lot of things you can see if you know what to look at.
I was saying, any other good tells for picking up blitzes? The 2 stories you just shared. Anybody else? No?
Here's another one I would always talk to my guys about. When you're playing a team that's in base defense, but they're playing with a linebacker who's playing walked out. So let's say you're in 12 personnel and you line up in a detached formation. The linebackers are coached to line up at the position they normally play. So if you're playing against a team and their depth of their backers are 4.5 yards or 4 yards or 5 yards, when he's walked out, he should still be at 4.5, 4 to 5 yards. Anytime I would see a linebacker in a press position outside, to me, that's a blitz. So it's just now a nickel, that's a different animal, but a linebacker not playing at linebacker depth and trying to be like an apex player or walked out and he's at 2 yards, that's to me a shit disguise, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has some other ones they've been able to cover or uncover.
Well, one of the things that I teach my running backs all the time about is I teach them triangles, which is find the first linebacker to your side, corner, and safety. And just in the most simplistic of terms, if the triangles are big, there's not any pressure coming. When the triangles get small and they get fucked up, then they're telling you that there's pressure coming. So if the triangles are really big, that means, just think of a 2 deep coverage. You got a big triangle between a linebacker, a corner, and a safety. When all of a sudden the triangles get really small or distorted, then your antenna should be up. And it's worked pretty well over the years in terms of just blitz or no blitz.
Okay. All right, Lou, you've been quiet, man. I know you got some tells because shit, just to get through spring practice with some of the stuff you guys probably see, you got to have some answers for you guys.
It kind of goes back to what kind of been said a little bit. I think the biggest thing, kind of like Brian said, was the defensive identification that you guys talked about earlier. Is just understanding the defense, eliminating threats, and then understanding like if the safety if the boundary safety is off the hash in what I call the logo area, which is in between the hash and the numbers, and that corner is pressed, you got to be alert for the corner crash. Like that guy, like you have to. He's out there for a reason. He's gonna go take over number 1. What you talked about with the Joseph Addai story comes like I call it a wide double mug, because the 2 guys in there, you call it split mug, same deal. But when those guys are looking at the ball, they're trying to play off who's gonna drop from the center comes and who's gonna come, and they're worried about that. So you just kind of play like understanding what those guys are really, what the intent of the defense is, so you can help yourself get out to your route and not get stuck in there. Because kind of like Leighton was talking about, like we just played Auburn. I know Cadillac's not here. Their linebackers green dog every chance they get. So it's a big deal to understand the protection so you can get out. So I had some freshmen playing in that game, so I like the matchup of them running routes than pass protecting, really. So I'm trying to get those guys out as fast as I can, so they have to understand what the big picture is and what they're really trying to do, so they can't just get a cheap rush on us when they're not really trying to rush. So kind of little things like that.
And I'll say this too, to the other thing that helps you at times is, so I had Theo Riddick in Detroit, and he was at one point, he was arguably one of the best receiving running backs in terms of number of catches. he would want versus teams like that. He'd want them almost to know he was running a route, and he would sometimes get his alignment wide because when he would stack the tackle, then that linebacker thinking, he's about to release, I better get in position to cover him. So he would play so many different games with the linebackers with his alignment to try to throw them off. And then at times he would, so I don't know who said they have, Eric, I think you said from a protection standpoint, I have my read step and we step up and then we can see what's happening and then we release. He would use that mentality, but it was like a fake release step. And in his mind, I'm going to show free release. If I see the linebacker lean with me, then I'm gone. If I show the fake release and he comes, then I got to scramble back inside. But he would try to play so many games with the coverage people so they couldn't get a beat on him, and a lot of that stuff just happens to be, sometimes you let a guy do what he does because there's a good rhyme and reason to it. And I've learned so many things that I didn't coach and players showed me. And then I started coaching because of stuff like that. So he would do stuff like that. I've had other guys that would we don't ever cut block, but they do a great job of faking they're going to cut block and then stay up and try to slow down rushers that way. I mean, just a lot of different tricks you use to try to do your job and not get green dogged in, for example.
It's interesting just talking about learning from your players because, in college, it's always like, when you got young guys in there, you don't know what they know. So it always gets kind of hairy to let them kind of freelance. Obviously, as they start to play more, you trust them and they can kind of, you can let them kind of let the game come to them a little more. But, I don't want, Coach, you don't want to handcuff your guys, but sometimes with these young guys, you got to just make sure they play within the system before they get into that point.
Right. And I'll share this. If all you guys get to the next level, you know what I mean, and you start coaching those guys, you have to let them do that a little bit. You have to. It can't just always be my way or the highway there. There's got to be a little bit of flexibility to let a guy, if he's had success doing something, like I'm not going to screw Joseph Adai up, telling him, no, I want you to step up for that A-gap blitz, not do what you just did. I mean, we're not going to do that. I'm going to let you do it until you prove that it's wrong, and then I'll try to correct you, not the other way around. So I think that's just one little point. Coach how you do, but on Sundays, the guys that play on Sundays, they need to have a little bit more say in how things get done. Just a little bit. Not they take over, but I do want them to have a little say in how we do things. So that's just food for thought down the road.
Well, that's an interesting story because I tell the story when I was coaching Ron Dane at Wisconsin. He didn't want us push cracking on safeties, and we spent all this time. Everyone spends all this time trying to crack safeties to get the back on the corner, and Ron said, "Fuck that." He goes, "I can't see that corner." He goes, "I can see the safety. If I know where the safety is, I'll deal with the motherfucker."
Yeah.
I don't like that guy slicing me from the side when I can't see it. So we stopped blocking safeties, and he handled them. And I can tell you this: most of the time, for the rest of my career, because how many times do receivers really block safeties? So what you do is you just bring extra people into the hole. And you block the safeties with your course and the way you run the ball, and you eliminate space, and you bring defenders into the block, and then you make your jump cuts or do whatever you're going to do to, you bring them into the mousetrap, so to speak. Not having these receivers that really aren't going to block the guys. But I learned that I share that story only because you said you got to listen to your players, and it made a lot of sense to me, and we listened to him.
And he only ran for like 10,000 yards, so it worked.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they want to really get chatted about? If not, I know the game kicks off here in 15 minutes. So, next week we'll hit. Next week will be good because we'll start talking about vision and run reads and different things next week. And then I think the next couple lessons we'll get. We're going to do a pass protection one, so that'll be good. We kind of talked a little bit tonight, but we'll have a bigger discussion on pass protection. Then we'll talk about backs in the pass game, and then we'll do a game day. I think the next one after that will be game day mechanics with the coaches in terms of what we're doing, and then we'll get our development stuff in. So once again, appreciate you guys. Hopefully, when we get on and when we get off, we've got a little nugget, or we've learned a little bit by the time the session ends that we can use and incorporate, and we'll go from there. But I don't know how you guys feel. I'm pulling for a close game tonight, and hopefully it comes down to the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. So we'll see.